A good brainstorm is one of the most powerful ways to generate ideas for your new business or to come up with product ideas. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about what is a brainstorm and what makes for a good one, the brainstorm we ran here in Bali, the structure that we took to that and the people we put together, and the results we got from it. What are the ideas we came up with? And finally, as facilitators and designers, how do we intend to use those ideas over the next 90 days? All right, first off, what is brainstorming and how do you make a good one? And I'm going to get a little theoretical for starters. Where do ideas even come from? A bit of a mystery, but I like to think of it in two ways. Ideas can either come from inspiration, which is a very personal endeavor, inspiration, or observation. Observation is external. You're looking, you're observing, you're watching somebody do something, and in the process of observing, you come up with an idea. A great brainstorm and a great ideation process uses both inspiration and observation to come up with an idea and then refine it. Inspiration, my favorite quote about inspiration is from Howard Schultz, the founder of a little cafe called Starbucks that I'm sure you've heard of. Howard Schultz said, "If it captures your imagination, it will probably capture the imagination of others too." This is one of my favorite quotes because to me, it gave me permission to just sit down, get into my creative place, like Happy Gilmore, and let the ideas come from wherever that magical other places that ideas come from. And this is really powerful because it generates ideas that are deeply personal, that are unique, that are truly innovative, can come from that place of inspiration. But if you go too deep, and I've done this myself in the past, I created an $11,000 coffee machine that was a little hard to sell. Going a little too deep on inspiration can lead to an idea that maybe doesn't have that big of a market. You know, when I've come up with ideas that are too unique to me, I found that it wasn't necessarily a great business because I didn't spend enough time out in that other creative realm of observation, refining my ideas and watching people interact with them. So that's the other one. My favorite quote about observation is from Henry Ford. When Henry Ford said, "If I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse." This is a really famous quote. And people usually take this quote and they say, if I asked people what they want, they would have said a faster horse. Therefore, observation and surveys are meaningless. I can only use inspiration to come up with an idea. And I foundationally disagree with this. The big key is how do you observe? Imagine if Henry Ford, instead of saying, "What do you want?" had come up to somebody with a prototype Model T and said, "Look at this horseless carriage, what do you think of it?" When presented with that prototype, a person could say, "Oh, I need 4 doors, I need a roof, I don't want to crank the engine." They could say things like that because now they have something in front of them and Henry Ford could then observe their interaction with it. So these are the two main ways, kind of the two end extremes of coming up with an idea for a product or a business. And a brainstorm puts the two of them together. My favorite quote about the clash between inspiration and observation, and this is not a direct quote, but it's kind of in the theme, it comes from Steve Jobs, where Steve Jobs said a great team is kind of like a rock tumbler, and you take those ideas, and those ideas come out, and they have rough edges, and they're not fully formed yet, but you get that great team together, and there's this friction between the people. And with that friction, those rough ideas become smooth and become gems. And that's the kind of environment we're trying to create in a brainstorm, that rock tumbling between inspiration and observation. Next, I want to talk to you about how we set up a brainstorm here at Yes And Technologies. As a facilitator, setting up that brainstorm is this kind of balance. You're essentially herding cats. And to herd cats, you need to know more or less where they want to go. But if you put too much guardrails on them, they're not going to go anywhere at all. And so for me as a facilitator setting up this brainstorm, I thought, okay, I got to create some direction here to start coming up with ideas, but not too much that people feel constrained. The other big thing as a facilitator is putting together a great group. So for our group for brainstorming, we had about 10 people from all over the world, from Northern Europe, from mainland Europe, from the USA, from Canada, from Asia, people with very diverse backgrounds. Most of their people were in their 20s and 30s, which is great. It aligns with more or less with the target market that we think we want to go for. You know, one factor in sort of choosing a target market with a product, I've found that when there's a lot of alignment between the designer and the customer, that can create for a really fast product ideation process because as a designer, you get to really rely on your own instincts and you kind of are your own customer, and that's a great thing. It allows you to go really fast. But these principles I'm going to be describing aren't restricted only to that. You can use these techniques if you're designing a product for someone else where you don't personally experience the problem. But when you're designing in that kind of case, you really need to make sure you're getting enough time with the customer that you're really well interpreting what's going on with them because your own instincts might not be right. Cool. So we assembled this amazing group of people and then we set up our brainstorm. So to kick things off, we started with lunch. We wanted everybody to feel fed and ready ready and just kind of engaged. We then got into creative warm-ups. I'm a huge believer in creative warm-ups, and it seems so silly at the beginning of a brainstorm, but that's the point. You want people to get into that silly creative place. It should start feeling like kindergarten, like you're a kid with a crayon and a bunch of pieces of paper and you draw a picture of the moon and having a birthday party with all your friends on it. That's the kind of creative energy we're trying to make with the warm-ups. So we took a ball, we tossed it around, we shared our favorite desserts and musicians and did some dance moves, and pretty quickly everybody was flowing and in that great place. Next, we got into the formal brainstorm session, which comprised a few sections. Step one was taking Post-it notes and markers and listing out problems and ideas. It turned out to be important to prompt people to do both at the same time because some of our group members were really good at describing problems, but didn't necessarily know how to solve them. And that's very useful. People who can clearly articulate problems are really, really useful when you're ideating. And some of our group members were more comfortable proposing solutions, but spent less time thinking about their problems. So having both of these together actually created a really productive structure. Next, we had everybody stand up and share their ideas and put those Post-it notes on the whiteboard. Once we had all of the problems and ideas on the whiteboard, we clustered them. So this is where myself as a facilitator and one of our participants got up there and grouped all of the ideas to see where our clusters were. And it was actually that clustering step that was really valuable because that's when we could start to see, hey, here's some physically large clusters. And when you hit that cluster where there's a lot of ideas and problems all in one space, that shows you that that's like there's a lot of heat to it. There's a lot of energy. People are thinking about this thing a lot. It's hot. Whereas, if you've got one sticky note all on its lonesome off in the corner, and in some case, I had some ideas. I think I really wanted a travel coffee kit. And I was literally the only person in the group who really cared enough about it to talk much about coffee. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. It's a little telling this group, but it's also telling, hey, maybe there's a smaller market for that idea than for some of these other things. After clustering, we got into voting. Voting, when you vote on the Post-it notes, that usually in a corporate setting, that's actually a really important moment because when I've done this in corporate settings, people are really trying to push their ideas and see if they can get something greenlit. But here in Bali, we're kind of hanging out. And it was very interesting. The voting step really mirrored the clustering. Like our biggest clusters got the most votes, the smallest clusters got the least. So it felt like people didn't really have an agenda. They were mostly just sharing what was on their mind. That would be, I think, consistent with what was going on here. But that voting step can be really important in other contexts, and I really recommend keeping it when you run a brainstorm. Finally, after voting, we did an exercise called Crazy Eights, which in the Google style of the Post-it note brainstorm, you literally take 8 minutes and do sketches and things like that. For us, it was a little bit more island style, and people just hung out, said, hey, you can do this alone or you can do it in a team if somebody shares your idea. And the prompt was take 8 minutes and do your best to describe a product idea. Everyone had to stand up and pitch at least one product. Give me the name of the product, the problem it's solving, and 3 to 5 sentences about features in that product. And you do the pitch, and then there's Q&A, and that was the end of the session. This session was really, really powerful for us, and I'm gonna share with you the products we came up with. We're gonna have a little bit more detail on these products coming later, but I just want to share with you the results of our brainstorm because it was really exciting. There's a lot of great ideas that came up. One of our participants suggested sustainable product purchasing in Bali to put groups of people together to purchase sustainable products to make them more affordable. Another suggested quick change camera filters. So if you've got a digital SLR camera, you can easily slap on ND filters, UV filters, things like this, so you don't have to be going through your bag to find them. Someone described the perfect water bottle for travel, which has built-in filters and a cap that keeps everything clean and a bunch of other cool ideas like that. Another person wanted automated luggage that could follow her through the airport and climb stairs because it was sometimes hard for her to carry really heavy luggage. That was a really interesting and powerful idea. It's not a problem I personally experienced, and to me, hearing that idea come out was really telling, and I think underscored the power of brainstorming is getting out of your own life experience and empathizing more with others. Another idea was a flying camera that can follow you and really frame up shots really nicely. So obviously similar to what you've probably seen with some of these drones, but a little bit more targeted for indoor use. One of our creators suggested the ultimate vlogger camera, which was really exciting. It was combining a action cam with a gimbal style vlog camera into a single durable waterproof shockproof device that also had good lighting and all these other attributes, and that was a really, really exciting idea that seemed to resonate with everybody in the group. Our biggest cluster when we did the clustering was community. And that was a really common theme among everyone in the brainstorm, was the need to find community when you travel and the benefit of community. So we had some ideas shared around what about creating a website for shared travel experiences, or a website website that can connect content creators with hotels and communities that are looking for UGC content. Another idea was a camera light that doubles as a charger so that you can get that lighting for your shots, but also charge your phone or your camera as you're going. The perfect camera tripod was shared for travel, something very small and compact, under $200 that folds up very densely. Yeah, so those were top ideas out of our brainstorm. So our next step here at Yes And is we're gonna be taking these ideas and refine. That's where we took our brainstorm was really well done with that mixture of inspiration and observation. It generated all these ideas. Now my next step is to make these ideas feel more real. So I'm gonna be using generative AI technology to create renderings of the potential ideas, sticking up posters for people here at the hotel to be interacting with them, and I'm gonna be making more posts of this for you as an audience to be interacting with and letting us know what you think of these ideas. So I'm gonna be taking what would have been a asking what do you want, hearing faster horse, and turning that into doing my best to try to put in front of you as quickly as possible what a Model T might look like and getting your feedback on what do you wanna see in it. So more to come. Stay tuned.